Well, hello, sports fans. We're back. It's episode 101. The good-looking gentleman in the blue English kit above me is Stuart Weir. He is our senior writer for all things Europe. I'm Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. We're bringing back Athletics Chat, Season 3. Stuart, it's great to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're back by popular demand. Well, I mean, there's somebody somewhere who definitely wanted it back.
I think so. And I believe that I was the focus of your ire with my coffee with Larry last week about the British selection process. Please educate me and tell me
Well,
the error of my
look,
ways.
it's one of my functions in life is just to correct you, to try to educate you.
Yes, thank you.
The issue is that to get into the British team for the World Championship, basically you have to finish in the first two at the trials and have achieved the World Athletics qualifying standard.
Okay.
But then beyond that, there's a third place, which is
Okay.
at the discretion of the selectors. Now, the American system of 1, 2, 3, no ifs, no buts, is clear, understandable, brutal, and
Yes.
very harsh if you happen to be the world record holder and you are ill the day of the trial.
Right.
And so that's the reason that we have this just allowing one place for the selectors to choose an athlete who is clearly a medal prospect, but who for some reason was unable to perform on the day of the trial. Then the other route into it is if World Athletics find they don't have enough entrants in particular disciplines, they invite according to the ranking. And British Athletics has said that they will only accept invitations from athletes who have achieved the world standard, or in a few cases, a GB standard, which is just slightly easier. But basically, they're not going to accept invitations for people who are not likely to reach the final. This means that the teams that will represent Great Britain and Northern Ireland, to give the correct title, in Budapest will be approximately 55 athletes compared to 80 in Oregon and 120 at the European Championships last year. And a number of athletes have gone public, athletes who will get a World Athletics invitation, which British Athletics will, actually, I think you now call themselves UK Athletics. They've dropped the British. So UK Athletics
Okay.
will not accept them. And some athletes have gone public saying that this is a restraint of trade, that they're denying me the opportunity to compete in the World Championship, to get sponsorship, and so on. And so that is the debate. And perhaps you should tell me and everyone why you think British Athletics should accept these invitations.
Sure. Okay. First of all, I love the British system. I've watched it for years. This is one of the first times that I kind of looked at it and said, I recall two people that I know, both Wendy Sly and Seb Coe, not getting selected for events back in 1988, and the late Cliff Temple just going absolutely apeshit about it at the time, pardon my language, because he thought that they should have, and it was a different situation. What I've been having a hard time understanding is that British athletics has a system that works, understand, but right now World Athletics is giving them a bonus almost, is the way I see it, allowing some of their other athletes a chance to compete at that level so that down the road they could perform at a medal situation. I'm all about athletes getting the opportunity because I have watched so many athletes at the World Championship level, at a European Championships, at a British champs, a US champs, they look and see the crowd and they lose everything. They forget what they're there for. And I think you need that experience, that level of stress to be able to perform better. So I was thinking that perhaps British athletics could look at it from that way. The idea that, okay, yes, we have our group here. World Athletics has now said, okay, this is an opportunity to fill these fields. Maybe it's something we should consider. That was one. I also thought in terms of because I know British athletics is in a difficult financial situation right now, much of it through no fault of their own. Jack Buckner had nothing to do with this, neither the Mr. Monroe or the people who have really fought to bring it back. So total respect them. So I thought of two suggestions for funding. Go to the footwear sponsors, or the sponsors these guys have, and say, men and women have, and say, hey, World Athletics is inviting them. We need some help. Can you help? One. Or want to give Nike some brownie points because Nike is dropping all this cash to be sponsor British athletics. Hey, Nike, why don't you do it? Because everybody's going to be in their kit. So I thought of a few ways that I thought it could work. Reading your statements, I thought very well articulated. I saw something from another thing from Stephen Maguire, but I think I saw something from Jack Buckner. My issue with Jack Buckner, who for my friends at Adidas I've been told he's an incredible person, a great administrator. British Swimming loved him. His athletes, friends who competed with him, think highly of him. All I've been able to ascertain is seeing him through interviews and his conversations with British media, which seems that, he's rather comfortable talking to the media. He made the comment about being more ruthless, and that scared me because one of the things that has happened with British athletics is one of the real stories in our sport is that British athletics since Diana Muldahl in 1998 has really risen from the ashes. You've had great athletes. You've had athletes who were mediocre, and now you've got incredible athletes. You've got athletes competing at all levels. But don't we need to also continue to develop athletes? Over here, we're spoiled. We got 1.6 million kids in high school track and field and cross country. We got 200,000 in colleges. We got about 5,000 sub-elites. And then we get, and USATF puts on events. They take credit for a lot of other things. I think their coaching education, some of their other things are good, but they get the best of the best. And there's always new athletes coming up in the US. That's not so in other countries. You've got some kids young men and women who are really close. And you said something in your piece about why don't they just focus on getting to that standard? And that's a good point. But I also think that this was an opportunity that has been lost. And it's negative publicity for the sport. And in the past, there's been a little grumping and stuff about it. But is it Alex Bell, the young woman who just ran 159.28? So she did the Dave Bedford, signed to the media, which was signed to British athletics. And apparently, was it Dan Vernon? Is he the head of, or is it Stan Vernon? Stan Vernon.
Steve Vernon.
Steve Vernon, thank
you. Whose brother is Dan Vernon, the photographer.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, cool. Okay, so Dan is shot for us. Steve, I met Steve at the night of 10,000 PBs in 16 when he was coaching the New Balance crew at the time. And good guy, but Alex is saying, oh, he's not returning my messages and stuff. So this is looking rather negative. And that's my issue. We just don't need negative stuff in the sport,
Well, let's begin by clarifying that this is not about money.
Yes. Okay.
This is strategy. And as I understand it, actually World Athletics cover a lot of the cost of athletes going to the World Championship. There are additional costs. For example, if you take 80 rather than 50, you need more therapists, you need more management, you need more coaches. But this is not about money. Stephen Maguire, who is quoted in the piece I did for you, said, we are looking for a strong team which is competitive. We want athletes who are capable of reaching a final. We don't want to just fill up spaces with athletes who, unless they do a massive PR, are not going to get out of the prelim. And that's what it's about. You will find that there are some young athletes who will be added. There are one or two, I believe there's 2 female hammer throwers who are going to get invitations from World Athletics who will be accepted. But I don't want to name names, but one athlete who has being quite specific, has actually run 12 times in the last year without ever getting the World Athletics qualifying standard.
Okay.
And I mean, I just tend to think in those circumstances, perhaps you need to look in a mirror rather than blaming the system. I mean, Stephen Maguire said, when I say have the potential to reach the final, I don't mean you have to be ranked in the world's top 8, but you need to be competitive so that on a good day you can do it. And in terms of people having experience of championships, so that you don't suddenly go to a championship and we say the rabbit in the car headlight. That Stephen would say, well, last year to Munich, we took 130. There's experience of a championship for people. Whether the world championship is something where you take people just for experience is a different matter. And he talked about pathways. He talked about, if you're an aspiring athlete, get into some continental gold, silver, bronze, get into Diamond League, get selected for a European team, a European under 23, and so on, to work through the pathways. I mean, I think it is a great shame that if you look at long jump and triple jump, male and female, you've got there 4 competitions, 3 athletes in each, 12 athletes, and we have only got 1 going to Budapest out of the 12. But whose fault is that? Sadly, 1 or 2 are injured. But, from the days when we used to have 4 female long jumpers capable of reaching a final, and I mean, I'm talking about Jasmine Sawyers, Lorraine Ugin, Shara Proctor, and Abigail Irizuru. Now, and all of those have reached finals, and 3 of them have won medals. But sadly, at the moment, well, Shara Proctor has retired, and Lorraine and Abigail are just not showing the form that they need to be selected. And I mean, that is sad. But I don't think it's the fault of the system. I don't think it's the fault. You see, in a way, comparing America with Britain is difficult because you have such strength and depth. I mean, I talk about the women's sprint hurdles in Rio, where you had an American 1, 2, 3. Brianna, who were the other 2? Nia. And the other lady's name has gone from me. But actually, I think we could have had 3 other Americans, like Dawn Harper-Nelson, who could have been there and could also have done a 1, 2, 3. You see, nobody but America has that strength and depth. And you see, it's not unusual for us to have people who will come first and second in the trials who don't have the time. I mean, the 800, which is a strong event for us, we find that those who finished first and second in the trials didn't have the qualifying time. They've now gone out and got it. So we're fine with that. But you see, this is something we do not have, the strength and depth. And so it's a different ballgame. Now, you mentioned Alex Bell. Stephen Maguire actually said that was the most difficult decision they had to make. And in the end, they went for Ellie Baker ahead of Alex Bell. Stephen said that Alex had been injured earlier in the year and the trials had just come a little bit too early for her. And that he would have been very happy to select her, but in the end, they went for Ellie Baker, who had, had just performed well and probably deserved her place.
Sure.
So it's a tough one there. Because of course you've got Keely Hodgkinson and Gemma Riku taking the automatic places. I mean, this is one of the situations where I remember talking to names. I'm struggling with names tonight. This is a real American. I remember talking to Chanel Akin. She's now married to, but what was it? I can't remember her surname. The American 800-meter runner, Chanel.
He moved? Oh yeah, okay.
No, no, Chanel from previous.
Oh, Chanel
But, you know,
Price. Chanel Price.
Chanel Price, she was running times in the US trials and coming fourth or fifth that would have got her into the final in the Olympic or World Championship. And that is a problem for Americans, which we just do not have. And I mean, this argument's an interesting one, but basically, you and I will just have to disagree on it. But I am comfortable with the British management saying, look, we do not want to take people who, in all likelihood, are not going to get out of the prelim, or if
Yeah,
they do get out of the prelim, they're going to be towards the back in the semi.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, Charles von Comeny, if you remember that name
Oh,
from the
yes.
past, when he was head coach, he did take this to extreme. And I
Yeah.
mean, his model was, say, Larry, you and I are sharing a room at the championship. I go out and I lose in the first round. He said, well, I'm bringing an air of negativity into the room. And you're suddenly thinking, golly, it's harder than I thought. He hasn't done well. It'll be okay if I don't do well. Whereas Charles was saying, what I want is me to come in, having reached the final, you to feel under pressure that you've got to do the same, otherwise you're letting the team down. I mean, it's a kind of psychological argument, and you can argue it both ways. But it's not about money. It's about strategy. How can we get most people in finals? How can we get most bettors?
Okay. Point well taken. Point well taken. We have a disagreement from across the pond, but we're good.
Yeah.
Speaking of across the pond, I want to talk about Coach Bobby Kersey, longtime
Yeah.
coach. I've known him since the 1980s. First time I sat down with him was in Knoxville, Tennessee in '94. He sat next to me in the stands and explained the big the Ben Johnson crisis back in 1988. And his comment was he wanted to see Ben Johnson tested a lot and doing well because he was tired of people thinking the drugs are making the athlete. His comment was, you cannot make a racehorse out of a workhorse. And he spent 2 hours explaining all this to me. I didn't know him from Adam at the time. I was fascinated with his thoughtfulness. And I said, maybe he's not as big a raging pain in the butt as I think he is, because I just watched him with his athletes, most of the time hollering at his athletes. Didn't understand that part of that is the persona. And in talking to his athletes, they seem to love him. Every one of them. I mean, Jennifer Prandini at the LA Grand Prix, Stuart, just said she is so lucky to be training with his group. She said each day she's surrounded by greatness. I thought that was really cool. Kenny Harrison this year running fantastic under Bobby's eyes. Sydney is there. McLaughlin Lavrone running well. Athing Mu. Now we get to the LA Grand Prix. They build the meet around Sydney and Athing. Bobby Kersey pulls them out. He does an article with Adam Grief in the LA Times saying that they have possible injury stuff, blah, 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 blah. But I'm looking at the optics and I'm going, he helped develop this meet. He's pulling two of his top athletes out. The rumor mill is it's because it's over money. And then there's a couple other fiascos at the meet. Even though I think the meet was fantastic, world record by Ryan Krauser. But I understand that Bobby's a coach and has to protect his athletes. But the optics are, this is a guy who is holding the sport back. Now we're being told he doesn't know whether or not a thing's going to run. Now, there's arguments about it. As you know, we've got all these world championships and Olympics. Can an athlete run well every year? Some can, some can't. And it sounds like a thing is kind of reaching a time where maybe she needs a break from this kind of a situation. I'm okay with that. My issue is, why didn't he talk about it earlier in the season? Why is it happening now? The social media vitriol is incredible. I'm trying to respect Bobby because I know what he's done for his athletes. And I know at the end of the day, he really cares about them. I don't think it's about money, but I do think the optics on the sport are terrible. And I had a media scribe today say to me that This is the reason why the sport cannot become professional, because people like Bobby who can pull athletes out of things and can have this kind of power. And I'm not sure what to say about it. What do you have a comment?
Well, I have never met Bobby, but I would agree with you that any of his athletes whom I know speak incredibly highly of him. One thing that shocked me was in Paris when Sydney was running the 400 flat.
Mm-hmm.
And at the presser, she was asked, will you be running the Open 400 or the hurdles in the World Championship? And her answer was, that's for coach to decide. And to me, that was very strange. I mean, I don't want to read too much into the word, but I mean, he didn't say, well, coach and I will be talking about that. She said, that's for coach to decide. And that seemed to me rather strange.
They have a unique relationship. And if you recall, Allison, Felix was coached by Bobby for a long time. Well, Allison didn't come out and say things like that. She always would tell me, yeah, coach and I are going to have to talk about it. And I remember teasing her one time about the 400 hurdles. I said, Allison, Bobby trains you over the hurdle, as a 400 hurdler. When are you going to do it? And she looked at me and she said, no. And I think it's the only time she was really adamant about, well, let me talk with coach. But they have that relationship. You know, I use the term that they're really drinking the Kool-Aid, not disparagingly, but they really believe in what the program that Bobby has for them. And I think that's great that they believe in their coach. My concern is Bobby Kersey is one of about 8 coaches in the U.S. that the U.S. can pretty well guarantee are going to bring 2 to 5 medals back at any major championship. Now, the deal with the thing is, if she goes to Budapest, she's not going to run the 4x4. Wow, that changes the 4x4 dramatically. Does that mean we're going to have a problem there? I don't think so. We've got 8 400-meter runners that are incredible. But there was a time a couple weeks ago that we were worried if Sydney was even going to run at Budapest, because in the statement it said, we're hoping that she'll be ready for the world champs. You know, keep your fingers crossed. And Malika Mahambo just pulled out. We just heard that Nafi Tiam, the great heptathlete, is having Achilles problems again. So that incredible battle we were hoping to see between Anna Hall and Nafi Tiam, you know, that could not happen. So, and that's part of the sport. But this adds another layer, and that's my concern.
I was just thinking of a legendary soccer coach in England, who's now dead, but Brian Clough, who was very much, well, a bit of a dictator, you might say. And he was asked, what happens if you disagree with one of your athletes? And he said, well, you sit down, we talk about it, and we realize that I was right.
Yeah.
And so when you say that Bobby's athletes are going to talk to him about it, I hope it's not going to be that kind of conversation.
Yeah, me too. Now, I think that Bobby's done incredible things for the sport.
Yeah.
He is a iconic figure. And as I said a month ago, he's out of his gourd sometimes, but he's our out of his gourd person. So, you know, we kind of go with that. I wanted you to talk about the British championships and what observations you had from there on the team that you guys are taking to Budapest.
Actually, funny enough, I was thinking of writing something on this. The British championships, you know, we talked a bit about how our selection is different from Europe. And you can guarantee at the American Championship that you're going to have the 2 best athletes in an event running against each other, because there's no other way to get selection. And you see, we had a situation where we have Dina Asher-Smith and Darrell Nita both were well capable of getting to the final and challenging for medals. But in the trials, they did not run against each other in either the 100 or the 200. You know, one of them did one, the other one did the other. And that was because either a deal had been done privately, or they just thinking, look, the times I'm running, I'm going to get the automatic third place. And so that is a disadvantage about it. And similarly, I mean, the British 1500, men's 1500, could have been a phenomenal race. Jake Whiteman, Josh Kerr, Neil Gourley, and so on. Sadly, Jake is injured and out for the season, and Josh, again, either having made it done a deal or just thinking it'll work, decided to run the 800. So again, you don't actually get your best runners running against each other. It's difficult because a good championship for us would be something like 6 medals. And perhaps I'm being a little bit pessimistic, but I can sort of give you a reason why some of our top medal hopes, you know, are not in as strong a position as United be. You know, I mean, Dean Asher-Smith has won the World 200, but then Tokyo, Oregon, she had struggles. You know, she's if everyone, you know, in the 100 meters, there are 3 or 4 women who are capable of running 10-7.
Yeah. Dina
has never run 10-7, so there's a pressure there. I have the utmost time for Darren. I think that the way she has made running sub-11 normal is brilliant. But again, she's got to go some to run a 10-7. I have so much respect for Lauren Weir. You know, the way that she got medals in Tokyo and in Oregon. Obviously, she's in a different coaching situation at the moment, and her season has perhaps not been as successful as it might have been. The gap between her and Faith Kipyegon and the gap between everyone and Faith Kipyegon seems to have grown.
Yeah.
Sadly, Holly Bradshaw, who took a medal brilliantly in Tokyo, has had a nightmare since.
Yeah.
You know, starting with a practice jump in Oregon where the pole snapped and she landed on her back.
Yeah.
And has not really been fully fit since that. She will be in Oregon, but not in the shape that she'd like to be in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Neil Gourley is in the form of his life, and Josh Kerr is looking very sharp.
Mm-hmm.
But Ingebrigtsen just looks unbeatable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, everyone else you think is competing for the silver and bronze.
Yeah. No, I think Ingebrigtsen really was stung by Jake's performance last year. And Jake told us afterwards that he knew he had to make a move, or he had to get the jump on Ingebrigtsen, and he was right. And he outplayed Ingebrigtsen, and I don't think Ingebrigtsen's had a day. I don't think Jacobs had a day that he did not wake up replaying that race through his head. That's the kind of athlete is, you know. And Seb Coe said something about it on Monday or on the 31st. It was Jonathan Galt from Let's Run asked him the question about Ingebrigtsen and how you could race against him and how he would race against him when he was at his best form. And one of the things that Seb said was that Jacob's father studied what Peter Coe did with Seb, and that it's those moderate intervals, really short rest that have just made Ingebrigtsen this incredibly difficult person. I mean, he may not have 52-second last lap speed, but if he's dropped 57s and 55s for the other parts of the race, you're not going to have it either. And that's part of the situation. No, I think you have an incredible team. What do you think about Jasmine? Do you think she's got a shot at medaling?
Oh, definitely. But again, having done the 7 meters in Istanbul, she hasn't been consistent through the season. But then, I think she will definitely be in the take up for the medal. And a very interesting thing. I said to her in Budapest, it was down to you, Mahambo, Ivana Valletta. Did you find that daunting? And she said, no, honestly, I didn't, because I have been competing against those two since we were juniors.
Yeah.
So I don't see them as superstars. I just see them as people I have competed against all my career.
Yeah.
More often than not, they beat me, but sometimes I beat them.
I wanted to ask you a question. When in the UK, when you see the Diamond League meets, is it on pay TV or is it on BBC?
It's on BBC, but it may not be on a main channel, but it means that everyone has access to it free to air, as we say.
Okay. Because over here, we had a little bit of an issue, and I think you may have had it too over there. Diamond League we see on Peacock, which is part of the NBC conglomerate. And then I don't get NBC because I don't have I don't get terrestrial TV, but NBC was covering most of the Diamond League meets with their crew remotely. But what happened at the U.S. Champs this year was very confusing to us. For the first time since 2006, NBC did not show the U.S. Champs on terrestrial TV. You could watch it on Peacock. You could watch a couple roundups on CNBC, a channel they have with about 3 million viewers, but NBC has 82 million. Big difference, right? When we asked about it, USATF really didn't want to talk about it. But what I was able to ascertain was the following. NBC, as always, gave them several windows to put the U.S. Champs on. The USATF elite group who manages performance said that for our athletes to perform at their optimal in Budapest, we need the championships between the 6th and the 9th. NBC wanted it the weekend before or the weekend after. So NBC then said, well, then we can't put it on the regular TV because we've got Wimbledon, we've got several other things. The chance of people viewing it dropped by almost 75%. But what is confusing for me is NBC is building up Budapest and then building up Paris. So why wouldn't they, a year out from Paris, show the U.S. championships? You'd have thought they'd have figured something out, even tape delayed. And then I understood your championships were just on streaming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there an uproar about that in the UK? Or did people just say, hey, this is the way it is?
There was no uproar really. What kind of crowd do you get? Spectators.
Oh,
U.S. count.
At the champs, we got, let's see, it was 5,000 the first night, 7,000, 7,000, and then 9,000. It was okay. The stadium sits, the way it was configured, sits about 15,000. But the problem in Eugene is getting worse. The hotels have tripled in price since 2019. The airfare has more than tripled. I used to be able to go Madison, Wisconsin to Chicago, Chicago to Eugene, maybe a stop in Denver for $386 round trip. And I would stay in a Hilton hotel, which, I'm a Hilton lifer, for about 122 US a night. The Hilton was $524. My airfare round trip was over $1,200 I had another stop to go into the Bay Area, and I'm staying in a Motel 6, which is okay, but it used to be, it literally was pretty well abandoned for years, and now it's under new management. So they're trying to clean it up, but it's the only thing under $200. And the problem with the Prefontaine coming up is the Prefontaine is the weekend of the biggest American football game of the year. It's I think the Oregon versus Oregon State. They call it the Civil War, and there'll be 80,000 people in Outson Stadium, and 18,000 at the pre. I mean, the ticket sales have gone pretty well for the pre, but it's going to be challenging. And I think people in Lane County are getting tired of all the events at Eugene. So it's going to be. I hope that Tracktown can figure it out, because what was interesting. You remember a couple years ago, at the World Champs, you stayed in this university on campus. So I tried to do that for the U.S. Champs. They wouldn't let me. And I wrote to Tracktown and said, hey, do you have a couple rooms? Sorry, you got to fend for yourself. I'm kind of going, wow, you guys really don't want people to come to the U.S. Champs. And I think that, I mean, they've got 8 years now of NCAA champs coming, and there'll obviously be U.S. championships, but we need to start moving the U.S. major events around the country. We have a Grand Prix in New York and L.A. That's great. What about something in the middle of the U.S. or something in the South? And what are we going to do about U.S. champs? We got to move them around, So it'll be interesting to see kind of how it plays out.
We had 50,000 for the Diamond League in London.
Yeah.
But for the British Championship, which is a 2-day event, I think there were a total of 4,000 or 5,000 people.
Wow.
People for 2 days.
Wow.
And that is fairly normal since it's been in Manchester. Whether you get more in Birmingham, I think it'll go to Birmingham next year. I don't know. But part of the problem we were just saying that if you can market it, Dina against Darrow, Jake against Joyce, it's much better than if you have situations where they can bypass the confrontation. And also, we have a situation where in some of the events, it's partly because it's a 2-day event, that if you are in the top whatever number in the country, you get a bye through a wild card through the prelim. So therefore you actually get some people who are running 3 races and others are just running 2. And of course it means that the stars are running less. And so again, sometimes you feel, well, actually if you're trying to attract spectators to the event, that's not the way to do it.
No, it's, what do you think about the way they do the rounds in the 100 at the World Champs?
In what sense?
Where the first round, they let, they don't have the major athletes in there. They bring them in the semis.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, in 2 Olympics, I have been in the Olympic Academy for Togo, a small country in West Africa. And Togo gets an athlete into that prelim for the Olympics who would not qualify on time. And I think in a way that's great to give an athlete a chance to run in the Olympics. And I mean, the Togo athlete won not even the prelim, the round before the prelim, and ran the 2 fastest races of her life in those 2 races. And you can't ask for more than that.
Oh, yeah.
And a great experience. So in a way, I know it goes against what I was saying, whether that Britain is not taking athletes who are not good at program. But I think for smaller countries, it's nice to allow someone to be part of that. And I mean, our Togo athlete was desperate to be in the next lane to Shelly Ann. That would have absolutely made her day. If she had having got through, it's an open draw to some extent, she could easily have been in the next lane to, somebody like Elaine Thompson, Sherry Ann, Alison Felix, whoever. And I mean, I think that I like that. But I mean, in a way, you're talking about people from smaller countries, really.
Well, we try to give people different perspectives for our readers at Run Blog Run. Stuart, I think you do a great job with that. We have gone over 10 minutes on our athletics chat number 101.
Mm-hmm.
It was great seeing you again, my friend. And perhaps we can do one next week before we head to Budapest. When do you head to Budapest?
I arrive on the Thursday. So is that 2 weeks yesterday?
Yeah. Okay. I leave on the 15th. I'll be there on the 16th. So I look forward to seeing you. But
indeed.
This is Athletics Chat 101. Thank you, Stuart Weir. This is Larry Eder. Thanks to Mike Deering for putting up with us. And we are coming back with this program. Hope you enjoy it. Talk to you soon.